along with it.
Well, you're not in any way a follower. And there are people who are just programmed out there to be some kind of a follower.
I guess
like
so.
Nancy Garrido.
Yeah.
And then he talks about the Scientology leader, David Miscavige, who took over the church. He wrestled the control after L. Ron Hubbard died in 1986. And he said young people at the desert base, this is the base in Hemet, which, by the way, he has like a map of on the inner flap of the book, the international headquarters of Scientology in Gilman Hot Springs. This is near Hemet. Young people would sign billion-year contracts, work 100-hour weeks for little or no pay.
I like that, a billion-year contract.
Can we get one here at the station?
Well, I don't know if I'd want that.
The ever-present threat that they may be pulled into hellish disciplinary drills or separated permanently from friends and family members for the slightest perceived infraction.
So how many people are living at this base?
Don't you come and go?
Well,
no, you can't leave the property.
There was a story about, and by the way, he talks about his, quote, escape. And apparently Riverside County Sheriff's deputies aided him in escaping from this base. Apparently in 2005, he was accused of embezzling money. But what he was doing, he says, was selling old Scientology equipment on eBay in an approved scheme to raise money for a new base project. But he was declared a suppressive person. And he might be sent to the Rehabilitative Project Force in L.A., a prison program. So he just decided it's time to go.
It says on the Scientology website that the goal of auditing is to restore beingness.
Do you know there's only...
No, that cleared it up.
He says there's only about 10,000 Scientologists in the whole world.
Yeah,
they claim that there are millions. And
10 million is their worldwide number they've sometimes
And, of course, the stupid-ass media reporters always print the 10 million because that's what Scientology says. Turns out there's only 10,000.
And
because people run away.
Part of his proof for that is something called an e-meter, a small device that works something like a lie detector. And apparently Miscavige wanted 2 of them made for every member, and 30,000 were built. That means 15,000 Scientologists. By the way, they were selling them for $3,000 each to members.
Yeah.
The device cost the church $40 to make.
He says the actual number is more like 10,000. They made extra e-meters because various facilities had to have extra on hand. So Scientology is not that big a deal. They just happen to have some idiot celebrities like Tom Cruise and John Travolta signed up for it. So it makes them seem much, much bigger than they really are.
If we never accomplish anything else with the John and Ken show, we're at least part of a dedication in a book that got a guy to get out of the Scientology church.
Yeah, we inspired somebody to leave a cult.
Yeah, see? That's something.
All right.
And you know what it made me think of?
Himself.
It made me think of people with little earphones on and little Walkmans listening to our show in dark, secret places.
Yeah, you wonder.
Right now, anywhere.
Yeah, you wonder what else is going on out there.
The book is blown for good, Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology. Marc Headley will be in studio tomorrow at 6, so please make a note of it to be listening for that tomorrow.
Yeah. And, it's funny, there's so much good stuff in here that the bottle and ashtray, what is it, the book and bottle story? It's not even in the book. This is what he just told to the Village Voice writer as an extra. More coming up on the John and Ken Show. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio.
Tonight on the Brian Suit Show, Meg Whitman is on a record-setting pace. What record is she going to break? I'll tell you tonight. Also, the 30th anniversary of the Iranian embassy standoff. Tonight on the Brian Suit Show.
Brian Suits, tonight at 7.
KFI.
AM 640.
KFI, AM 640. More stimulating talk radio.
John and Ken Show, John Cobell and Ken Shampoo. Right after 3 o'clock, we're going to play you some of the audio from the Inspector General David Shaw's press conference on how the Department of Corrections, and specifically the parole department, screwed everything up for 10 years in going after Phil Garrido. I mean, everything they did wrong. And the Inspector General, and by the way, it's the first time that I can remember an Inspector General, I didn't know we had one, an Inspector General holding a press conference about anything that the state has screwed up.
Because the Garrido story is huge. It's nationally and internationally known because of the circumstances. So he figured there's a demand people want to hear.
He should be generally inspecting everything in government and issuing reports every week about all the foul-ups.
He should be probing all of the legislators closely.
Yeah, I mean,
undressed.
This is a colossal failure. A decade-long failure.
Well, what also is interesting is the corrections secretary, Matthew Cate, was there. and answers some questions about the foul-ups. We'll play you that audio as well. Couldn't let this go by without mentioning it. Enrollment in the Los Angeles Unified School District has fallen to less than 680,000 students this year. That's a 10% decline since it peaked 7 years ago. We talked about this till we were blue in the face when earlier this year the big debate was, the pink slips to the teachers and the cutbacks, and what are the schools going to do? And the school district is in such financial distress. There's a reason that should be the case to some extent. The enrollment is declining. And when you have a 10% cut in the number of students, you should have at least a 10% cut in the expenditures. Yes or no?
I would say yes, Mr. Champeau.
A.J. Duffy turned right around and said, well, then they have to cut the bureaucracy, not the teachers.
They have to cut everything. But this is why you should please stop voting for bonds to borrow money to build more schools.
Yeah, that's the other part of this.
Stop it. Do you know?
That's already done, though. You're going to see schools going up all over the place because of bonds passed the last 5 or 10 years.
In 3 years, there are going to be over 110,000 empty seats in the L.A. school district. 110,000 desks with no bodies in them. They are building schools for no one. We're not talking about rebuilding old schools. We're talking about building brand new schools. 110,000 empty seats.
And let's talk about the reasons for this. Let me take a guess. More and more citizen parents decided that the LA Unified Schools are so horrible they're not sending their kids anymore. More and more citizens said, I'm leaving LA because it's a crap hole. And number 3, yes, some illegal aliens left because the job pool dried up and they took their kids with them. Those are your 3 reasons, and I defy anybody to say it's different. That's why enrollment's dropping, right there, those 3. And over the last 7 years, especially the last couple of years, as the economy has circled the drain.
With the exception of a few schools, mostly on the west side of L.A., if anybody has an extra few dollars, they would go private. I mean, I would.
And if you don't, you move to a better school district. Anything you can find in the state or anywhere in the country.
Right. You move.
Your kids are important, and their education is very important. You don't stay.
There's people who send their kids to Catholic and Jewish schools, and they're not even Catholic and Jewish. It doesn't even matter what the religious indoctrination is. They just don't want them to go, to the cesspool that the LA Unified District is about.
And be plunked into a school with a bunch of Spanish speakers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst. I'd rather have my kid with a group of Scientologists than with a bunch of Spanish-speaking kids.
And you'll find that some people won't even admit this. They'll hand-wring and say, but secretly this is what they do. Publicly, they'll say, well, we got to do what we can for the children. They're all here. They all have to learn. They all are going to be future members in our society. But secretly, what they'll do is they'll take their kid out of the school and they'll put them in a private school. They'll move to another place.
All right. More coming up on the Garrido case. This is the John and Ken Show. Terry Railmer has the news now. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio.
Wednesday, November 4th.
The entire West Coast is listening. KFI.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
News on the hour, on the half, and when it breaks.
A new state report describes a near complete failure of parole agencies to monitor the man charged with kidnapping J.C. Lee Dugard. I'm Terry Ray Elmer.
This new audit says parole agents ignored obvious clues something wasn't right at Philip Garrido's home near Antioch, where he's accused of holding Dugard captive for years. Department of Corrections Inspector General Dave Shaw says the problems began when Garrido's first parole agent decided Garrido was a minimum risk offender.
It's apparent that this initial mistake set the tone for many mistakes to come.
Agents never looked at Garrido's criminal record. They ignored hundreds of GPS alerts that he was violating rules and only checked on him 12